Hello everyone, my name is Amaka and you're welcome to Lizama Stitches. In this tutorial, we are going to be learning how to make a crop top. Now, if this looks like what you like to learn, keep watching and click on the subscribe button and also turn on the notification bell so that you'll be notified whenever I upload new videos. So let's get started. Now, I have my front panel and my back panel here. This is my front panel and this is the back panel. I'm going to be drafting them together. Now, my fabric is folded into two. The front panel and the back panel, they are folded into two. So now I've drawn some lines already. Now this is my starting point, which is also going to serve as my shoulder line. This is the waist point. Shoulder to waist is 16 inches. Shoulder to the full length of the top is 19 inches. Now I have half-inch seam allowance. I'm using half-inch seam allowance because I'm going to line the top. But if you're not going to line your top, you might be needing 1.5 inches seam allowance. But I'm using half-inch for my seam allowance. I'm going to start by taking my neck measurements. Now, the neck width I'm working with is 3 inches, 3 inches neck width. And the front neck depth is 4 inches, 4 inches. Now, the back neck width is also 3 inches, and the back neck depth is 1 inch. So I'm going to connect the points. Now I'm going to take the shoulder measurement. The shoulder measurement I'm working with is 15 inches. 15 divided by 2 gives you 7.5 inches. So I'm going to mark 7.5 inches here. 7.5 inches plus half-inch seam allowance gives you 8 inches. So I'm going to mark 8 inches here. Now from this point, I'm going to come down by 1 inch for my shoulder slant. Now this is 1 inch for my shoulder slant. Now I'm going to connect this point to the neckline. Just like this. Now from this point, I'm going to, now the armhole measurement, I'm going to impute the armhole depth. Now the armhole measurement I'm working with is 16 inches. 16 divided by 2 gives you 8 inches. So I'm going to mark 8 inches here. I'm going to mark 8 inches. So I'm going to extend this point. This measurement I have here, this 8 inches I have here, I'm going to bring it down here, just like this. So this is my 8 inches. So I'm going to connect this point to this point. So the next thing I'm going to do on this point, now this is my chest point. So on this point, I'm going to take my bust measurement on this point. So the bust circumference I'm working with is 37 inches. 37 divided by 4 gives you 9 1/4. So I'm going to mark 9 1/4 here, 9 1/4 here, plus 1 inch for ease. Now this top is a free top, so I'm using 1 inch for ease. 1 inch for ease. So the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to find the midpoint of this line. Now I'm trying to create my armhole curve. I'm going to find the midpoint of this line. Now this is the midpoint of this line. The midpoint of this line is 4 inches. So from this 4 inches, for the front armhole, I'm going to go in by 3/4. I'll mark 3/4. I'm going to connect this point to this point and this point to this point. Just like this. Now for the back armhole, I'm going to connect this point to this point. I'm not going in. I'll just bring down this point, just from here to here. So now, on the waist point, I'm going to take the waist measurement on the waist point. The waist circumference I'm working with is 31 inches. 31 divided by 4. 31 divided by 4 gives you 7 3/4. So this is 7 3/4 plus 1 inch for ease gives you 8 3/4. So the same measurement I have here, I'm bringing it down here. 7 3/4 and so now I'm going to add my seam allowance. So the seam allowance I'm working with, so I'm working with 1.5 inches seam allowance. So I'll connect the points. And I'll cut it. So I'll start by cutting the back. But before I do that, let me add my shoulder seam allowance. So I'm cutting the back first. So I'm going to separate the front from the back, and I'll finish the front. Okay, now the back is going to have opening. So let me do that. I'm going to, the back is going to have button. So I'm going to use, let me use 6 inches for that. So I'm going to slit it. Let me stop at 5. So that's it with the back. Now for the front, I'm going to finish the front. So this is my lining. Now I'm going to transfer this. I'm going to use this to cut the lining. So I'm going to do it and show you the outcome. So now I've used it to cut my lining. Let me show you how I'm going to join it. I'm going to place it right side facing right side. I'm going to place it like this, right side facing right side. So I'm going to start by sewing the neck. I'll sew the neck with half inch seam allowance. After sewing the neck with half inch seam allowance, I'll notch. After notching, I'll put the seam allowance on the lining and top stitch. Then after that, I'm going to sew the side with half inch seam allowance, and I'll sew with half inch seam allowance. So that's for the front. The back panel, this is the lining and this is the main fabric. So I'm going to place it right side facing right side, and I'll sew. Now take note, I have this strap. Now this is going to be for the button. So now this is how I'm going to fold this. I'm going to fold it this way, and I'll fold it this way, and I'll fold it again, and I'll just top stitch. That's how I'm going to do it. But you can decide to sew it this way with half inch seam allowance and turn it inside out, like turn it to the right side from either of these holes. But I'm not going to do that. This is how I'm going to turn mine. I'm going to fold it this way, fold it this way, and I'll fold it this way, and I'll top stitch. That's what I'm going to do. So after that, I'm going to fold it this way, and I'm going to put it in between this. So I'm going to put it here like this, just like this. I'm going to put it this way. Now take note, I've placed my fabric right side facing right side. So now I'm going to place this way, and I'll sew it this way with half inch seam allowance. Then I'll notch. After notching, I'll put the seam allowance on the lining and top stitch. Then after that, I'm going to sew the sides. I'm going to sew it with half inch seam allowance, and I'll sew with half inch seam allowance. So this is my top. Now I've sewn my top. Now this is what I did. I sewed here with half inch seam allowance, and after sewing, I pushed the seam allowance on the lining and top stitched. And after that, I now sewed the lower part. I sewed the lower part with half inch seam allowance. After sewing the lower part with half inch seam allowance, I had to push the seam allowance on the lining and top stitched. After that, I now sewed here and sewed here. Now for the front panel, I started by sewing the neck. After sewing the neck with half inch seam allowance, I pushed the seam allowance on the lining and top stitched. After that, I had to sew the lower part. After sewing the lower part with half inch seam allowance, I pushed the lining on the seam allowance and top stitched. And after that, I now sewed the side, and I sewed the side. So let me turn it to the right side. Now take note, I used 1 inch for ease. You can use 2 inches or 3 inches for ease, depending on how free you want your top to be. I've ironed it. This is it. So this is the right side, and this is the wrong side. You see how it is? Now this is the wrong side, and this is the right side. So now this the next thing I'm going to do. I'm going to take this to my sewing machine. This is how I'm going to join it. Now I'm going to start by joining the shoulder. I'm going to bring the shoulder this way, and I'll place it. This is the front panel, and this is the back panel. I'll place the shoulder this way, and the main fabric will be placed right side facing right side. Then I'll hold the lining to lining, and it's going to be placed right side facing right side, and I'll sew. I'll sew with half inch seam allowance. I'm going to sew it like this. Sew it like this with half inch seam allowance. After sewing, then I'll turn it to the right side. I'm going to do it and show you the outcome. The same way I'm going to do this, I'm also going to do this one. Then after that, after sewing the shoulder, I'm going to place the front panel on the back panel just like this, and I'll sew with 1 inch seam allowance. Sew this other side with 1 inch seam allowance. Remember that I left 1.5 inches seam allowance. Now I've used ½ inch to sew in this part to hide the rough edges of my seam allowance. Now what is left is 1 inch, so I'm going to use 1 inch to sew here. I'll sew here with 1 inch. For the sleeve, now this is my sleeve. I'm using a basic sleeve. I have a tutorial on how to draft a basic sleeve. I'm going to leave the link of that tutorial in the description box below so that you can check it out later. So I'm going to fix this. After sewing this, I'm going to fix the sleeve and show you what it looks like. I finished sewing. This is my top. So this is the wrong side. You see how I've sewn it, and I've also attached the sleeve. After attaching the sleeve, I piped it. This is the back. So let me show you the front, the right side. So this is the right side. That's just it with this tutorial. I'm going to wear it on my mannequin for you to see what it looks like. Now, if you found this tutorial helpful, please click on the like button. Share this video with your friends. Share this video in your sewing groups. Subscribe to my channel if you've not done so. Feel free to ask questions. I'll be in the comment section to answer all your questions. We've come to the end of this tutorial. Thanks for watching. See you in my next video. Bye.